So again, this segment is talking about picking issues to advocate through a justice lens. We're an interfaith group, but we work with people of both faith and goodwill, everybody who wants to see a better Virginia. And so the ethics that guide our decisions are really rooted in supporting the people who are marginalized in society. A lot of times that looks like pushing for racial equity. A lot of times that looks like pushing for economic justice and standing up for people who are lower income, people who are marginalized because of their socioeconomic status, and people who've been historically discriminated against. So as we approach issues, we're always on the lookout for supporting people who have struggled in some way or another, because generally those are the people that our systems gloss over, and those are the people who need advocates and supporters in the General Assembly and in the halls of power and as laws are made. So if y'all don't mind, just throw in the chat, what are some principles that guide your ethical decisions? And if you can quote a scripture at me, you can say, being nice to other people, or you can say fair trade and respect for the environment, but put in the chat, please, what are things that guide the way that you make moral decisions? Yep, empathy and respect for human relationships. I love that. I know others of you are thinking about chatting. You should write something down. Compassion and love. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, for me, it's human dignity, which Claire just said very well. Absolutely. I think that every human person is of incredible and boundless worth, and therefore humans should be supported as they try to reach their fullest potential. That means that I do my best not to destroy the environment, because that's not respecting future humans. That means that I think people should be paid a living wage for their work. That means that when folks are sick, I want to support them, not punish them with paid sick days, paid family leave, a reasonable healthcare system. That means that even after folks have made mistakes, even when people might be incarcerated, I think that their human dignity means they are worth protecting and worth caring for as a human, as a person, so they can re-enter society. Oh, I'm loving these. So much respect, so much kindness, equality. Yes, these are great things. And so all of these moral guidelines support us as we, take a long view on what we can achieve in the General Assembly. For example, this issue on limiting solitary confinement that we've been very, very active on this year in the GA. Sure, the UN said solitary confinement for more than 15 days is torture. Also, there are faith statements from dozens of different faith communities saying that we don't believe in solitary confinement and we call for an end to solitary confinement. And so we compile those faith statements and we pull from the UN and we work to make Virginia a better place for everyone. Yep, Amos 5:24. That's a classic. Gotta love the prophets. And so the way that affects us is that when we look at a particular policy, we're not necessarily looking at what's the impact on Virginia's budget, though that is something we will have to consider and have to write in our fact sheet eventually. We're not necessarily looking at how this affects nonprofits, even though VICVP is a nonprofit and some of these laws will affect us. We're looking at how it affects those who are marginalized in society. We also consider what might be winnable we understand that not everyone not every issue is going to pass on its first year in front of the General Assembly. Most issues don't pass on their first year in front of the General Assembly. Last year is a good example. Last year, the General Assembly passed a stepped up, slow increase of the minimum wage in Virginia with the support of Virginia Interfaith to get up to $15 an hour in 2026. But right now, the minimum wage is still $11 an hour. So we acknowledge that while we want it to be $15 an hour yesterday, and that's what we advocated for, we are still, it is still a win. It's still worthwhile. It was the thing we could get done to take one step in the right direction and take these incremental approach. So yes, we're always checking in with our faith community. We're always checking in with our moral compasses. And this guides kind of the principles underlying which issues we choose to take on. I noticed that BICPP's Executive Director, Kim Bobo, has joined the call. And she's going to take over in just a moment. But does anyone have any questions or comments about the parts that I shared, about the morality and the principles? And I so appreciate all of you putting, the things that guide your choices in the chat. All right. Well, I will let Kim take over, and thank you so much for being here. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Sheila.
Kids on the call, students on the call. Sorry.
What's that?
We've got 26 students on the call, and actually a whole class from Eastern Mennonite in addition.
Excellent. Hi, Eastern Mennonite. So I'm Kim Bobo. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. I'm literally speaking to you from the General Assembly building called the Pocahontas Building, which is across the street from the picture I have behind me. And I walked, I found an empty room so I could talk to you from. I literally just came from a Senate subcommittee hearing where I testified on a couple bills. And two of the bills that we actually had before the subcommittee, we got out of subcommittee. So unfortunately, that's only 1 out of 3 or two out of 4 bills that have gotten out today. So we've had a lot of stuff up. So we're working hard. So I think Sheila framed for you a little bit about sort of how we think about this in terms of our faith values and vision. But I wanted to just kind of go back because people are always asking me, well, Kim, how do you guys decide what you work on, right? There's 100 different things. In fact, there's about 2,000 bills in the General Assembly, and obviously we can't work on all of them. So how do we decide? What I thought I'd do is kind of go through both the criteria first that we have established and use, talk about what kinds of research that we do to prepare on this, and then talk about kind of what are some of the steps in trying to move policies forward. So in terms of the criteria that we use, again, you can't work on everything. So how are you going to make the choices between, this thing or that thing? For us, we start with, of course, our mission, which is to engage people of faith and goodwill in advocating economic, racial, and social justice issues. So whatever it is we're working on has to fall in that bucket. Now, honestly, a lot of stuff can fall in the bucket, so that's not enough in terms of criteria. So secondly, we focus on issues that are unifying within the faith community. Now, we all know that there are some things that are not unifying within the faith community that different faith communities disagree about, and we're not going to work on those. There's too many things that we agree on that we can work on, and so we're going to work on the things that are unifying within the faith community. And by and large, the faith community unifies around issues of poverty and low-income people, around the marginalized, whether it's sort of immigrants who are struggling to be accepted in the community, or people in our prisons, people who are, marginal, who struggle to have a voice in the society. Again, I think the faith community has a bias toward that set of folks. And then thirdly, the faith community, I think, has a really strong commitment to treating people fairly and equitably based on race and ethnicity. And so again, those are kind of big bucket kind of things that are unifying within the faith community. May not be unifying with everybody else, but within the faith community, that's unifying for us. Third thing for us is that that the issues that we're working on are really going to excite our base. There could be things that we could work on, but just they don't excite the base. So for example, there's all sorts of very intricate things around healthcare, like, certificate of need and this thing and that thing. And they don't suit us well. They might be important things, but they're too complicated. They're in the weeds. They're for other folks to work on. And it's not the kind of thing that our folks get excited about, right? It has to be of not only unifying, but of concern and interest in the faith community. So for example, every faith community you go to, they're helping homeless people, or they know they ought to be helping homeless people. And, and so the whole issue of affordable housing and trying to address the crisis of homelessness in Virginia, that is so not only unifying within the faith community, but people get excited and passionate about it. So again, we want things that tap into that passion in the faith community. Fourth, for us, we also, as a organization, we're not a large organization. We are a small faith-based nonprofit staff. And so we have to have the capacity to work on it. And again, there are some issues. For example, somebody was asking me about, have we gotten into any of the public school stuff? And we really haven't.
I need to lock this room.
Okay. All righty. I'm supposed to have to get out of this room. I can't just stay here and do this Zoom call here. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to move us out into the hallway. Here we go.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. All right. Not sure where I'm going to sit, but we'll just sit on the floor here.
The beauty of virtual backgrounds.
All right, so that's right, virtual background. So, so let me continue here. So we have to have the capacity. So, for example, as I started to say, the public school issues are really significant, really important, particularly in terms of low-income children. But there's lots of players. It's pretty complicated. And frankly, as an organization, we've just decided that's not a place we're going to be in because we just don't have the internal staff capacity. So we've got to have the capacity to really do the issues well, which mainly for us comes down to having the staff that are knowledgeable and skilled in those fields. And then there's two criteria that are really around being effective and making a difference. So, again, if something doesn't have a shot at winning anytime soon, or we can't have a measurable way to move forward on the issue, we're probably not going to do it, right? If this is just like Sheila was saying as I came on, like, yes, we might want $15 an hour tomorrow, but that is not going to happen, right? So again, we're not going to work on something if it's like just so out there. On the other hand, if something is going to happen without us and we're not even needed on it, we're not going to do it either, because I want to use, the gifts and skills of people like you effectively. And so it's again, trying to find that balance of something where, we're needed, it needs our help, but, we've got a shot at actually getting something through. So how do we, given that there's hundreds of things we could work on, how do we kind of narrow down which things we're going to work on? So first, we try and listen to, low-income people, low-income families, the marginalized, as I was talking about. We try and listen to people both individually through congregations and through our networks, but also through organizations that work directly with people in prison or the immigrant rights organizations, or again, trying to make sure that what we are fighting for is what people really want. So again, we've got a whole set of things that we do to try and make sure that we're actually hearing things right. Secondly, we listen to our base, right? Our people that are actively involved, what do they care about? What are they interested in? And again, part of why we're working on affordable housing was just everyone kept saying, couldn't you add this to your agenda? Couldn't you add this? We care about this. Our congregation does. So again, we listen to our base. We do surveys and all that kind of stuff. We have a board that has people from all over the state. The board makes the ultimate decision, but again, they do represent those concerns as well. And then we are a part of a number of long-term coalitions. And in these coalitions, sometimes the coalition as a whole will decide this is going to be the priority. And then, if we're working in that space, we will often decide, well, if that's what the coalition is going to do, that's what we're going to do too, right? We are a part of some strategic coalitions. Now, we don't join every coalition out there. We really only join coalitions that we think are, in line with the priorities. So for example, we're involved in a coalition. It's referred to as the Pretrial Detention Coalition. And this is a coalition that has been working on the issue of cash bail and trying to make it easier for folks to not end up in prison or have huge bails set for them that they can't afford, and so they languish in prison. But the coalition as a whole decided, now's not really the right time to do the whole cash bail issue. That what we need to do is we need to focus on counsel at first appearance, which basically is trying to get lawyers to represent people the first time they come before a magistrate. So again, that probably wasn't what we were going to do initially, but it's what the coalition decided in this space was the right direction. And so we're like, okay, we can do that. We'll do that. So again, sometimes it's in conversation with our coalition partners. And then we also have a whole set of legislators that we work with, and, they'll bring stuff to us and say, hey, what about this? And I want to move this. And would you guys be interested in working with me on this? And so again, all of that is part of the research, because you gotta, even though we'd like to say we introduce bills, we don't. Legislators introduce bills. And so if we don't have legislative partners, nothing can move. So again, that's part of our research, like, who's introduced it before, who would be good, all that sort of stuff. So all that is sort of background for us in terms of deciding, okay, we're going to work on solitary confinement, affordable housing, paid sick days, and a training on unconscious bias for healthcare professionals, right? That process got us to, we're going to work on these issues. And then that's where some of the what people think of as the traditional research occurs. So then first we research what other states have done this, right? Because there's no reason for us to reinvent the wheel. Let's look at their fact sheets. Let's look at their bill language. Let's look at what every other state has done. And on whatever topic it is, there's usually some national experts. And so, we almost always talk to the national experts because like they want to talk to us, right? So we talk to them and find out what other states have done. Then we look at, have there been other bills introduced in Virginia that are in this space that are similar, that, we ought to look at what happened, who voted for them, why did they vote for them, any of that sort of stuff. And then we look at drafting the language. Now, again, sometimes we're cutting and pasting from other states. Sometimes we're cutting and pasting from past bills, and sometimes we are literally sitting down and writing the bill. Now in Virginia, every state does it a little bit different, but in Virginia, there's drafters, and so your bill patron will send either an idea to the bill drafters or actually the draft that we've done to the bill drafters, and then they come back and they said, it's related to section blah 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 of the code, and they put it in kind of legalese language. And frankly, I've seen the bill drafters get it wrong, and we've had to fix what the bill drafters do. So again, it's, we're very, on the things that we are trying to lead on or play a significant role, we're very involved on the bill drafting side of it. Again, for us, sometimes there's bills that we lean on where we've written them, we're drafting them, we're moving it. And then there's issues that they're coalition efforts, and we're kind of playing a significant role, but not the only major role on that. Then we're always, once you get a bill, that you got your idea of what you want done, then you got to get a patron. And in Virginia, you want a patron in both the House and the Senate. When the Republicans controlled both houses, you wanted a Republican in the House and the Senate to be your patron. When the Democrats controlled both the houses, you wanted a Democrat in both houses to do your bill. And now, where it's mixed, you want both, right? You want a Democrat and a Republican. So we are nonpartisan. We work on issues, but it doesn't mean that we don't have to pay attention to the party stuff, because it dominates a lot of how legislators think, and it also affects how your bills are going to be seen and heard. And again, we've had very good successes when the Republicans were in charge, and we had good successes when the Dems were in charge. And and I'll have to say that this year we were not completely prepared that the House was going to flip from Democrat to Republican. And so we had recruited patrons that were Democrats, and then all of a sudden the House is controlled by the Republicans. And so we're scrambling, trying to get bipartisan support on stuff, because that's the only way you're going to get things out. So again, there is a lot of thinking that goes into the patron. So again, you do have to think about the party stuff and who's in charge and what, because again, right now in the House, a Republican is a better patron, and in the Senate, a Democrat is a better patron. So again, you do have to think about that. You also have to think about, the legislators are like the rest of us, right? They're human beings. And some of them work harder than others. And so they're really fabulous patrons on bills because they study the stuff, they know it, they practice it, they're fabulous. And others, I've had some patrons that got up and just really didn't even describe the bill correctly. And you just are groaning inside. But again, so you got to think about who's the patron, who's going to work hard, who's going to be a good patron, and who do other people in the Senate or the House like? And again, it shouldn't matter, but it does. It's really not only sort of the content of the bill. Some patrons, legislators like better, and so they get things through easier. Or we've been trying for the last 2 years to get a paid sick day bill passed and have gotten it out of the House a few times, struggled in the Senate. And one of the challenges for us was that we didn't have somebody on the Senate committee that was going to hear it as our champion. And so this year we finally have a patron on the committee, and that's the committee I just came from, and he was chairing the subcommittee. Our patron of our bill was chairing the subcommittee, and lo and behold, we got it out of subcommittee. So again, that kind of stuff matters. So then you get your patron, you get your bill, and then really the goal is to look at, you got to get a bill out of, in most cases, subcommittee and then full committee. And if you can do that, you've probably got the votes on the floor. And so then you spend most of your time trying to build support in those subcommittees and then the full committee, so you can get it out. And for us, we're a grassroots advocacy group. So for us, it's making sure that our members in those districts really know the issues, that they're meeting with their legislators, that they're, we had up this morning a solitary confinement bill. And so we literally were working on getting op-eds in the districts of those members on that subcommittee. And it mattered. I mean, today, now again, our bill got laid on the table, which means it's killed, but there was a long discussion about the bill. And they said, we want to see the Senate version because it's got some slightly different language. So we're open to the concept. We want to hear the Senate bill. And then they joked that, oh, well, we don't say that very often, which is true. And then there were a number of people on the committee who said, yes, I've heard from a lot of my constituents on this. I know people in my district really care about this. I too am concerned, right? Again, we had done our homework in terms of those members, and it really mattered on it. And then we combined sort of the handful of us, Sheila and me and Salim and Dora, like we are, here, we're at the committees, we're pounding the pavement, we're taking the fact sheets around, we're having those conversations. We combine that with, you talking to your legislators, you guys talking to, for those of you from Eastern Mennonite, it's Tony Wilt and Senator Obenshain. Now, Obenshain just voted against our paid sick day bill today. So again, that's a good one. Again, it'll come back to full committee. I think it will be challenging to get him to change his mind. But honestly, if he heard from 60 some odd number of folks who said, I work in these places, I don't have paid sick days, I go to work sick, or I know people who work in these jobs who go to work sick, it endangers all of us. I think that would matter to him if he heard lots of stories from people in the district. So for us, it's really combining that sort of the stuff we do in the building with really this grassroots momentum, because, we are not, we're not like the Chamber of Commerce. We do not make we don't make any donations to these folks, right? Now the Chamber of Commerce can get in the door because they make large contributions. And so can Dominion Energy. Oh my goodness, they make a lot of contributions. People listen to them. But our power really comes from you, right? Your constituents, your people in the district, and you move this stuff, and it really matters. And that gives us collective, gives us a lot of power together. So let me stop and see what questions people have. It's been wild the last few days. We're just rocking and rolling on our stuff. So. So let me see what questions people have.
I see Tara Dunnigan has a hand up. So go ahead, Tara.
So I guess the goal is to get bills out of the subcommittee into the full committee.
And then out of the full committee and onto the floor. And frankly, if you can do that, you almost always have the votes on the floor.
Thank you.
I walked through a little bit of that process earlier, but I was doing the broad strokes, so that's really helpful.
Well, and it's actually even a little more complicated than what I said. And that is that anything that it involves money will not only have to go through what's referred to as the authorizing committee, like the Committee on Labor and Energy or the Committee on Commerce and Labor, but it will get referred to the Money Committee if it involves money. So for example, our paid sick day bill, there were two of them that we were supporting, both of which got out of subcommittee today. Will go to the full committee on Monday. And then what will happen is, because they both end up costing the state some money, they have to go to the finance committee, and the finance committee will have to hear them as well. And they will have to get out of the finance committee before it can go to the floor. So if it involves money, you got to go there. And frankly, the money stuff is a place where folks, if an agency doesn't want to do something, they will say it's going to cost them $1 gazillion, because if it has a high price tag to it, then legislators will be scared and kill it. We had that problem last year with our solitary confinement bill. The Department of Corrections said to reduce the use of solitary confinement, it would cost them $40 million. It's like, what? How does it cost $40 million to use solitary confinement less? I mean, clearly the Department of Corrections just didn't want the policy. And so they said it would cost them 300 some odd new staff to be able to implement this. Now this year, honestly, they still don't want the bill, but we've managed to go back and forth and have got the fiscal note down to like $8 million. So again, we think we're gonna, we got a shot at getting it through. We're gonna get it through the Senate. We've got a shot at getting it through the House, but so I see two hands up. Let me get Grace and then Taylor. Grace.
So you said that bill about the solitary confinement got killed this morning. So if I have a meeting with my delegate like next week and I wanted to talk about solitary confinement, should I not address those bills specifically?
So it was a little complicated this morning. So what happened, in fact, I have an NPR reporter that I'm going to go meet with at noon because he said, can you explain to me what happened in committee today? So you're not alone and not completely understanding. So what happened was basically the Senate version of the bill was slightly different from the House version of the bill. And the Senate version, frankly, is better. Delegate Hayes had submitted, and we had not caught it, so partly my bad here, caught that he had submitted an early version of the bill that wasn't sort of the final version of the bill. The final version, the one that addressed things and frankly is the better bill, is the one that's in the Senate. And frankly, neither he nor me caught that he was working from this earlier version of the bill. And so then when he's doing his talking points, which literally I wrote his talking points. I mean, I heard him give them, right? It's actually fun when you write it and then you hear them like giving them. So when he gave the talking points, people in the committee were like, well, okay, you just talked about 15 days, but I don't see 15 days in the bill. Well, it's in the Senate bill. It actually wasn't in the House bill. So then there was all this confusion about it, and long conversation about it. And again, what the House committee said was, we're eager to see the Senate bill. We think maybe the Senate bill is probably what we want. And so we will give the Senate bill a good hearing when it comes over to our side. Again, that's not a done deal, but so what happens in legislation is, and why you generally want to start with two bills, one in the House and one in the Senate, is once you get it through one house, it crosses over to the other chamber. And then they have a chance to look at it. So you often have, bills that start out identical on each side. They get changed a little along the way, then they cross over and then they get changed. And then eventually there's a conference committee that works it out. And it also gives you two shots at the apple when you're doing legislation. We just lost the House version, but they've expressed openness and willingness to consider the Senate bill. We're going to get the Senate out of the floor this week, probably, maybe Monday, but maybe this week. And then we'll go to the House after crossover. So I think we've got another shot. So so long answer to your question. Yes, you should talk to them about it because it's coming to the House, and we think we've got a good shot in committee. And who's your delegate, Grace?
Elizabeth Guzman.
Oh, I can assure you she'll support this. And just know she's been a great champion for paid sick days. So be sure to thank her for that. And she's been great on a lot of the immigrant rights issues. She's a very, she champions a lot of our stuff. So, but yes, do talk to her about it. And she'll support it, I'm sure, but talk to her. Taylor.
Hi, yeah. So my question is, what if there's a bill And a lot of people are not for it on both sides because they don't really think about the population. For example, disability population. I don't know if a lot of people in the government or people here don't think about how society affects people with disabilities. So my question is, what do I do about it? Because I do want to see change not only in Virginia, but also in the United States as a whole, where people with disabilities have access and are accepted. So what do I do? Because my passion isn't going to go away just because people don't think about people with disabilities.
Well, again, it's to get something into the General Assembly. Again, I'm not going to answer your question broadly in terms of the society, but really in terms of the public policies. There certainly are organizations that really advocate on some of disability rights kinds of issues. And so again, number one would be trying to figure out what are the best organizations in Virginia and who needs advocates to work with them on it. And then again, my experience on most nonprofits that work in this field, it doesn't take that long to become a leader in the organizations because, we really need people, right? And so trying to find an organization that's really fighting for some of the things you care about and sort of volunteering to help. And, again, Taylor, I would guess you would quickly become a leader. And I can speak for my organization, but I think most of the advocacy nonprofits that I know, again, we know the value of young people's voices. And are eager to have young people in some sort of leadership roles in the work. So that's what I would suggest, Taylor. And again, then, because on any of this stuff, this is collective activity. You cannot do public policy advocacy by yourself. It's just, you're not, unless you have, a gazillion dollars and can drop the money on somebody, you don't have that much power. But together we can have power. And so power mostly has to, for us, it has to be done through organizations. So you have to find an organization that really champions the issues that you care about and work through an organization. And if they're not working on the issues you think are the priorities, well, figure out how you can influence those issues, right? Because again, I have a handful of leaders that bug me all the time about a few issues. And trust me, they're more on my radar. I think about those issues and whether we could work on them because people are bugging me about them. So bug people. So find the organization, join the organization, and then, insert your voice in terms of what the priorities they're working on.
Thank you.
Sure. I see Rebecca.
Yes, I was having a question about, you said the Senate version of a bill and a House version of a bill. What's the difference between the two?
So what we usually do is you try to have identical versions in the House and the Senate to start. And then along the way, they get changed a little bit because somebody will make an amendment or they all do a substitution or they just kind of get changed. And so the bills that end up passing, a bill will pass out of the Senate that is mostly like it started, but a little different. And then it gets sent over after crossover to the Senate side for the Senate side to look at the House bill. And the same thing happens on the Senate side. Their bill will go over to the House side. And then they each get to amend them and change them and whatever. And then most often the bills that get passed out of both houses end up looking a little bit different. And so then there'll be a conference committee assigned to work out the differences between the bills. And so then you lobby all the members of the conference committee, and then whatever the conference committee bill is, has to go back to both chambers and go through both chambers in identical form. And then it can get sent off on to the governor to sign the bill, or he could veto it, the bill. But that's, now you don't really have to have two versions, right? You could just have a bill start in the Senate and then go over to the House, and then it works through there, and then it comes back and whatever. But again, you have more shots at it if you have two bills, which is why we always try to have two bills. And if, you usually try to start with identical bills. But again, things happen along the way. And like, sometimes there are like 2 or 3 kind of similar bills that are introduced, and they'll like all get rolled into one. Or there's a bill, there were 2 bills there were 3 bills in the House this year to freeze the minimum wage at the current level. And there was 1 bill in the Senate that didn't quite say the same thing, but was similar in the Senate. It got killed in the Senate. And 2 of the 3 bills in the House move forward. They pass, one of them, I think, passed the House already. And they will then go over to the Senate, and the Senate will kill them. Like, that won't happen. So there's a fair amount on some of these bills of posturing. And we're doing some of that too right now. So it's not just one side or the other that does a little bit of posturing, because partly what you're trying to do is set yourself up for the long haul on this. So for example, the way that they've structured the subcommittee that's going to hear our paid sick day bill in the House, we can't possibly get it out because we just don't have the votes. I've met with everybody. There's way too many people who are strongly opposed to any paid sick days. So we cannot get it out of that committee. So our goal right now is to get a good bill out of the Senate that we can use as the basis for work next year. It will go, if we can get a good bill out of the Senate, it will go to the House, and the House will kill it. So again, the folks who introduced the bill to freeze the minimum wage, they want to be able to tell their business allies that we fought for you, we tried to kill the minimum wage, blah, blah, blah. And they will, again, get it out of the House, but it'll get killed in the Senate. So there, so they're again trying to set it up, and I think they're the advocates on that feel like if the party leadership changes in the Senate, they might have a shot at freezing the minimum wage. So again, both sides do some of that. It's not ideal. Like, honestly, I'd much rather get something through both houses. We're working really hard on solitary confinement. We think we've got a shot. Don't know.
Thank you.
Sure.